Hello, Undefeated team. This is Christoph Kaiser talking to you from Phoenix, Arizona, presenting Submittal 1. I'm going to be presenting three interior concepts that maintain consistency with your existing brand identity while addressing, or maybe optimally addressing, the characteristics specific to the space at 4412 North Central. By specific, very simply put, we have a low ceiling in this space and we have a wide profile. And so our design is different than if it were a tall and narrow space. Um, Stylistically, the images that I'm showing you right now couldn't be more different than the Undefeated brand. However, there are aspects to each of these two images that we feel should be folded into the Phoenix chapter of Undefeated. From the image on the left, something that we're calling shoe bleacher, and from the image on the right, the idea of relief space or casual open space as a counterpoint to the retail display. I'll get into that more. We've also done some research on movable storage walls that we feel may be appropriate for use in the project for the back of house area to increase the amount of storage that you have. And we've priced the system that you're looking at here for the 4412 space at around $15,000 to give you an idea of what that cost would be. Before I get into presenting the three concepts, I'd like to acquaint you with the interior sort of kit of parts. Starting here at the top left, we've got fixed inventory racks, very similar to what you have in your existing store. And then moving to the right here, movable inventory racks akin to the picture that I just showed you. Floating shelves, these are shelves that would be attached directly to the existing walls, and these could be wood or steel, most likely. And I want to say right now that we're not getting into materiality in this presentation, and we're intentionally presenting to you sort of a blank canvas when it comes to material and design specifics in any of these components. So please disregard the color and even the form of things. Eddie, the specs that you sent me on retail display dimensions are great, and they will be implemented in our next round of design. And for now, we're just dealing with these components sort of loosely. So moving from the floating shelves to casement, this is the built-in millwork that will accommodate everything from hanging shirts to folded shirts to hats. Mirrors could also be integrated in this casement system. Wraparound point of sale is another component that we're testing, and you'll see this when I start introducing the different concepts, where this becomes a point of sale that is central to the space, and it becomes the hub, sort of a social hub for the space, versus linear point of sale. This is more similar to what you have at your existing locations, where you have a bar that is the point of sale that, in your case, typically rests against the back wall of the retail space. Shoe bleacher that I mentioned before, this is for product placement, shoe placement. Could also be informally where people would sit and try on shoes. And I think there could be visual cues, just carving out space within this where somebody could sit. Bench seat, and again, this could take many different forms, and we're not going to get into the design detailing of what that bench seat would be. Mirror bench is sort of a parallelogram that we've been thinking about, where one face of it would be at the perfect angle of the shoe mirror that you have in your current locations. And then we have chair lounge, or lounge chair, is talking again to this relief space that we think may be an important part of the retail space. Moving to the center here, video display per your existing video display walls. I think this will be a great way to really activate the space, make it dynamic. And then graphic wall, and this again is piggybacking on some of the aesthetics and treatments that you're using in your existing spaces. Graphic wall would be essentially digitally printed wallpaper. We've looked into pricing on this. We can source this locally for around $11.50 per square foot, and I think it'll be a very useful tool in your space. Interior concepts A, B, and C. And I will, of course, be getting into these in more detail as we go through each individual concept. But what I want to say here are the commonalities. What is consistent in each of these schemes is that we have a wall running north-south, and on the east side of that wall we have patron space, or the retail space, and on the west side of that wall we have back of house area. And that is true for all of these systems. And something else that's fairly common through all of them is the treatment on the walls, where we kind of toggle back and forth between, let's say this wall on this side would be a block wall that may or may not have a graphic treatment, have a large digitally printed mural going across the block face with these shelves floating on top of them. And then the adjacent wall on the other side of the room would have more of a casement treatment. And so in each of the three schemes, we kind of toggle those back and forth. So looking now at the concept number one. Once we've selected before I leave the slide, I also want to say once we have selected the concept that we feel is strongest that we're going to move forward with, we're going to dial in the design, hash out the retail display specifics and the materiality. And at that point, we'll also produce renderings that represent the space with materiality. What we're presenting today are deliberately void of material specificity. Here we're looking at an overview of our interior concepts A, B, and C, and I just want to acquaint you with some things that are the same in each of these before I go into what their differences are. The first thing that is same is that with each of these, and if you can follow my cursor here, with each of these we're drawing a line in the north-south direction that divides a back of house from a front of house. Back of house to the west and front of house to the east facing Central Avenue out here. So that's consistent with all of these, and we're using the location of the existing bathroom and the existing column, which in this case would be integrated in this wall, to establish that sort of datum. And that's obviously for cost reasons. If we don't have to move the bathroom, we'd prefer not to move the bathroom so you can spend that money elsewhere. A second thing to mention is that these components, this back of house and front of house for A, B, and C, are interchangeable, meaning you can take the front of house for C and use it with the back of house for A, or vice versa. And another thing to mention is that once we dial in which design that we'd like to move forward with, we're going to hash out at that point the retail display specifics and materiality, and we'll be producing at that point renderings that represent the space with materiality. So in what you're looking at today, again, there's a deliberate intent to not address materiality, and that'll come in our next phase. So with that, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, otherwise we'd be here for a very long time. I just want to acquaint you with each of our concepts, and then we can regroup and talk about these later. What you're looking at here is interior concept A, and with each of these I'm going to present to you a sketch, a digital model, an axonometric, and then a plan view of each concept. So I'll move through these fairly quickly. Central point of sale, again, is the idea that this becomes the central hub of the space, similar to how a kitchen island in a kitchen is very often the center of the party where people want to kind of hang out. So this, you can imagine as having some bar seats here, the integrated Gatorade refrigerator. This is where purchases are made. This is where we have our shoe bleacher that sort of greets you at the door immediately with merchandise, and you have that again on this side, the shoe bleacher that faces our digital display. So parts of this shoe bleacher I could imagine being kept void so that people could come in and actually sit down while they're waiting for somebody to grab their shoes for them and they have something to look at. Here's the digital model version of this same space. Actually, let me back up real quick and just talk about something else real quick. In each of these, we're showing a truncated duct. So right now, the air conditioning ducts in this space come forward to these air diffusers. And we've talked to one HVAC engineer that is pretty confident that we can get the same performance if we were to cut these ducts back here, and we would decrease the general visual clutter in the space, and we would also gain some perceived ceiling height by doing that. So we're showing that in this rendering with a little bit longer snout on this, but I mean, the end of the line for this ductwork could be here, or we could push it back another 8 feet or so. So here we're looking at the digital model of interior concept A. In this case, we're showing shoe shelves on this side, and again, these could be metal or wood and would have integrated LED lights. And these could also occupy the full height of the wall, or it could be a little bit more gallery style where we have fewer shoes displayed. And then on the opposite wall, we would have the casement millwork, which would have, again, shirts, hats, mirrors, hanging shirts, that kind of thing. Moving now to the axonometric view, this shows you a little bit more back of house. Changing room is directly adjacent to the existing bathroom. And I think the idea here would be that we make these doors as seamless as possible. So this reads as one continuous sort of wall element. Here we're looking at the plan, which gives you some more sort of dimensional information. By the way, in this presentation, we're not really addressing this back of house area, but we have started looking at ways to enclose that existing horse fence so that you have some private outdoor space at the back of that space. Interior concept B, I'm going to call the undefeated box. And by box, I mean this. So this concept is really about accentuating or objectifying this volume here so that everything that is back of house reads as if it was almost a box that was placed inside of the building. So this wall plane stops short of the ductwork, stops short of the existing structure, and we detail this to kind of float in the space so it would be slightly off the floor, let's say. And in this case, you have a plane that is tilted that you pass behind as an employee going to get shoes for somebody. And there's this panel here, which is the TV display, and this could be integral casement, such as the folded shirt display. The decisions we made in the foreground of that space are really to accentuate this being perceived as a box. So you don't want to put a big horizontal bar in front of this to obscure that move. In this case, we're doing 2 bars that run east-west, one of them being the point of sale and one of them being a very dramatic and long shoe bleacher. Here we're looking at the digital model of that same space. By the way, we do know that you're using light speed monitors. We're showing iPad displays, which is maybe a suggestion, and that's totally up to you. You can use light speed on iPads as well. We thought something more minimally sized would be nice at the point of sale, but that's totally up to how you're running things. This, again, disappearing behind this wall, you'd be going to the changing room, and going around this wall, you'd be going to the bathroom. I think, as they say, God is in the details. To make this thing read like an object floating in this space, I think it has everything to do with how, what is the color of this wall? Is this a dark form versus a light form, or vice versa? Here's the axon, which gives you a little bit better view of what we're doing here, this sort of playful move where this wall gets pushed back to allow access to the back of house area. In this case, we've got your office area here, and then a small sort of kitchenette using the existing plumbing that's already in that wet wall back there. Again, here we're showing the movable inventory racks, and this could be static as well. Interior concept C, we are calling traditional because it most closely aligns with your existing retail spaces. You've got your point of sale that's at the back of the space with your back of house wall as the backdrop to that. Here we're showing a digital display that's asymmetrically placed, and again, you'd walk around the side to go to the changing room in the back. And looking to the interior of this space, we've got this sort of relief space at the interior you walk in, and this is a little bit lighter touch, let's say for the retail display. If I back up to the sketch, you can see we've got this large kind of floating bench element that would be a little bit ambiguous. It's a bench to sit on to try on shoes, but it's also a place where shoes or magazines or maybe limited edition items are displayed in a little bit more gallery style aesthetic. Surrounding this, we have our shoe bench, or sorry, our shoe bleacher, which at the back of which could have mirror elements for trying on shoes. Here we've got the axon, and in the axon you can see we have another sort of minimally announced door to back of house that introduces to an office space back here. This could grow or shrink depending on need. And then we've got the plan view, which I think the only difference we're calling out here is the idea of a bar. And we may be showing too many seats there, but the idea that there's some community between you and your patrons, so I can imagine, or even people that are working at the store, just to kind of hang out. And I think that sort of casual vibe is something that we picked up on, that I picked up on when I looked at a lot of your spaces in LA. And I think that's something that's great about your spaces and something that I would try to foster. Exterior building. So we did some studies on the exterior, and these first two images are just showing you what the existing building is. And we have a white with black and a black with white concept. So this is exterior concept 1. This is white with black. Painting the existing building white with black accents. We're showing a billboard sign asymmetrically placed on the southeast corner of the building, which registers with an Undefeated sign that's mounted directly beneath it. The construction of these signs will be dialed in again in phase 2, whether they're facelit, backlit, neon, what font we use, etc., will be dialed in with input from you in our next phase. We're outfitting the underside of the existing shade canopy with the Undefeated logo in a sort of underbill baseball hat fashion. Something you don't see immediately, but only when you approach the building. The storefront glass is shown here with a halftone or stipple image, similar to some window decal treatments in your existing stores. In this case, and if I back up, you can see this a little bit more clearly. We've got Muhammad Ali versus Ken Norton. And Muhammad Ali being a Phoenix resident and recently deceased, we thought Muhammad could be a good choice. Let me forward through. And actually, before I leave this is a graphic treatment. I mean, despite the fact that you have this in your existing store, it's a graphic treatment that catches the eye from passing cars and also helps with the glare factor, which is something that we talked about on site with you when you came out to visit. Something else we talked about on site was the protective measure of the security gate, which you can see just beyond the glass here. I'd like to talk to you more about this, but generally we feel that embracing this existing very straightforward accordion style security fence is possibly our best and most effective option. It definitely needs to be sandblasted and refinished, but there's something very urban, raw, and effortless about that move that I feel aligns with the character of Undefeated. So let's talk about that next time we meet, whether that's in person or virtually, but that's something to think about. Something else before I leave this slide. We've removed the existing reddish concrete pavers on the east side of the concrete, which we feel are sort of quaint and residential, and replace them with a gray granite gravel that we would propose continue around the sides of the building, as you can see over here. And we would do that by saw cutting the existing asphalt 12 to 16 inches off of the existing block wall, allowing the building to meet the ground in a landscape buffer. This would additionally allow us to remove some of the sort of mess of pipes that run along the base of the building and bury them below grade, so they'd be located just out of sight here, giving us a more sort of pure box of a building. Exterior concept 2 is black with white. So this is self-explanatory. It's paint the building black and everything else remains the same from exterior concept 1. We are, by the way, showing door and window frames black, as you can see here, in both concepts. The existing frames are a bit rough and dingy. They're aluminum in color, and painting them black makes the frames visually integrate with the window graphics rather than pronouncing them sort of as a frame. And you can see that again in this view of the black with white. By the way, this is sort of our preference of the two options, the black with white treatment, but we recognize that we're also in Phoenix, and that's a thing to consider with our climate here. We look forward to your comments. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.